I was 12 and Gilles was 18. He showed me some of his drawings, landscapes he had seen in a dream. He told me of his desire to seek elsewhere a meaning to life that he couldn't find here. A short time after that, he left. The years went by, then one day I heard he had become a sadhu in India. Ever since that day, I have always known that I would one day go and find Gilles, who had become Jayramdas, to ask him what he had discovered. It took me 30 years to make that journey. It's difficult to measure someone's fervour.
Bien sûr, il est difficile de mesurer la ferveur de quelqu'un.
After Gilles' first communion, the pastor in Chamier took a small group of his communicants to a monastery in Calcutta.
Groupe de ses communiants dans un monastère en Calcutta, et je me souviens que Gilles.
And I remember Gilles had come back very moved.
Oui, et assez enthousiaste.
Yes, moved and enthusiastic.
Est-ce que la vie monacale
Had monastic life awakened something in him? I don't know.
Une sorte de planche sur laquelle il avait peint.
I found a board on which he had painted a figure with a long white beard and a woman dressed in blue.
Et une femme en bleu.
When I asked him about it, he said, "They are things that I've seen."
Il m'avait dit, c'est des choses que j'avais vues. Voilà.
Visions.
Oui.
J'ai ressenti une certaine époque un réveil intérieur qui m'a amené à...
There was a moment when I felt this inner awakening that led me to write a lot, to paint.
Peindre. Et puis d'un seul coup, je me suis tourné vers l'Orient sans savoir pourquoi, parce que je...
And then, all of a sudden, I turned to the East.
Intéressé par les philosophies orientales.
I had no particular interest in Oriental philosophies, but I read a very important book called the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which revealed to me that in life, without a master, it is not possible to progress.
Sans un maître, il n'y avait pas moyen d'avancer. J'ai commencé à avoir des rêves.
I started having dreams. I saw the Ganges, totally unknown scenes which certainly took place in the East. And then suddenly, I felt a very deep need to leave. When he was 16, we gave him more freedom and he started to travel, alone or with friends, hitchhiking. Sometimes it was a bit hard for us when he would phone up and say, "I'll be home tomorrow night, make me a nice dinner." Okay then. And I would ask, "And where are you sleeping tonight?" "In a ditch." You can imagine what we went through. We had many sleepless nights. He gradually got used to being away. He would leave, sleep on a pile of gravel somewhere. The conditions didn't bother him a bit. At the time, if I remember correctly, I was what's known as a beatnik. I was on the road. I loved it. I used to paint, but I didn't know I could make a living from that. I wandered all over, in France and abroad. Then one day, I met Gilles, a good-looking teenager who looked like Rimbaud, a bit androgynous, always smiling, a really happy bloke. We played music together. Gilles was tireless and had incredible rhythm. You had to hold him back all the time. He wanted to do everything.
Il a fini par nous dire, vers l'âge de 16 ans,
When he was 16 or 17, he told us he was going to travel, hitchhike round the world.
faire le tour du monde en autostop. Et
Our reaction was not a categorical
ça
no.
n'a pas été de lui dire non catégoriquement. On lui a dit, écoute, passe ton bac. Et on
We
va
said,
après.
pass your baccalaureate exam first, then we'll
Il y a
see.
eu quand même, on
After
sentait
that,
bien
we
qu'il
really
commençait
felt he
à
couldn't put up with this
tellement
anymore.
supporter. Il y avait quand même des frictions.
We started to argue.
On lui sortait par
He couldn't stand us.
Père, avec
Rows with his father, with me.
On essayait de lui faire entendre.
We tried to tell him what we
raison.
thought was reasonable, but it wasn't at all the way he saw things.
C'était pas du tout son optique.
We had our old-fashioned way of seeing
On
things.
avait nos vieux schémas.
Voilà.
That's right, but that wasn't at all what he wanted.
Projet,
We had no precise plans for him, but we had no idea what he had in mind.
dans la tête.
J'avais rencontré un metteur en scène de Biarritz.
I met a film director in Biarritz who asked me to do some sets for him.
Gilles est venu me voir.
Gilles came to see me in Biarritz.
Et là, j'ai vu
When he arrived, I saw a different man altogether. It wasn't the same Gilles, footloose and fancy-free.
qu'il était grave,
He had become serious, very calm.
calme. Il y avait, je dirais pas une.
He was mostly quite serene, but you could feel he was worried about something.
Il m'a dit, je pars.
He said to me, I'm going to India.
Je savais pas trop ce qu'il allait faire.
To me, that was just an adolescent whim, just wanting to copy other people, like Patrick, who had gone to Kathmandu, or others who had gone elsewhere to look for different things. It was common at that time.
Beaucoup à l'époque. Là, il a commencé à me parler avec un grand calme.
Gilles spoke to me very calmly. He knew where he wanted to go.
Et,
He stayed at my place for a few days. We went for walks by the sea. We had long talks.
La musique était plus dans
We didn't talk about music anymore. That was a thing of the past.
Gilles voulait aller ailleurs.
Gilles wanted to leave.
Et le dernier soir,
We talked a lot on his last evening, and he said, I'm leaving tomorrow
il m'a
morning.
dit, je pars demain matin. Et c'est pas la peine de te lever.
There's no
Moi,
point
je
you
vais,
getting up. I'll be up very early. I'll be heading for Spain.
Il filait sur l'Espagne. Et
He had noticed I was having problems, that I didn't have much money.
pas beaucoup d'argent. Et le matin, quand je me suis
In the morning, when I got up, I hadn't heard him leave. He'd been very quiet.
sur la table,
On the kitchen table, he'd left some money.
j'étais pas riche.
He was far from being rich. He had very little.
Ça m'avait touché.
That was really touching for me. He'd shared with me what little he had, without saying a word. I never saw him again.
Et je l'ai jamais revu.
J'ai laissé tomber mes derniers amis.
I left my friends, my family, everybody behind and headed off for Morocco.
Direction le Maroc. L'idée de départ, c'était de trouver un maître.
The idea was to find a master.
Ce maître,
Where could he be, that master? I didn't have a clue about that. But the search to find him took me halfway across Africa, across Arabic countries, and finally to India.
Ramené en Inde. Enfin, il y a que la vie antérieure qui peut expliquer.
Only
ça.
past lives can explain that. Nothing else.
Quelqu'un qui soit
Otherwise,
né dans un
it's
pays
unthinkable for someone who was born in one country to suddenly want to go to another country that he's never even seen. Only past lives can explain
La
that.
vie antérieure qui l'explique. Quoi. J'ai traversé
So,
comme
for
ça
nearly 2
l'océan
weeks,
Indien,
I crossed the Indian Ocean and the Arabian Sea.
15 jours. C'était assez extraordinaire.
It was quite extraordinary. When I arrived on the shores of India, I had a very peculiar feeling. I knew that a master, a yogi, was waiting for me to guide me on my spiritual
Sur la
path.
voie spirituelle. Là, quand je
I
suis
thought to
arrivé à
myself,
Bombay, je me
in
suis
such a
dit,
vast
pays
country,
aussi
where
immense
could he
que
be?
ça peut être. J'ai dû passer 2 jours
I stayed
à
in
Bombay.
Bombay for 2 days, then left.
La vision du Gange.
Seeing the Ganges with the Himalayas in the background left a deep mark on me. It filled me with joy and strength.
De force aussi. J'avais 5.
I had 5 pesos in my pocket, that's 5 centimes.
De 5 centimes, quoi.
That was all I had left. I went and bathed in the Ganges. As soon as I was out of the water, a priest from a temple called me and gave me something to eat. When I'd eaten, I set off on foot for Rishikesh. At the time, I walked quite a lot. And I stayed for a while in an ashram known as the ashram of Shivananda, a well-known saint. There was the road that went from Hardwar to Rishikesh, then our ashram, and the next wall along was the ashram of my master, the man who was to remain my master for over 20 years, only a 5-minute walk away. I arrived in front of the old wooden gate and saw this saint sitting on a chair. He had a very special aura. I had seen a lot of swamis, sadhus, saints, and everything else you can see on this earth, but this one, he really did look like someone very special. I went into the ashram and prostrated myself before him. He immediately asked me a question. "What are you looking for in India?" "I am looking for my guru." He smiled very kindly and asked me another question. "Have you ever meditated?" "No," I answered. "I try to meditate, but I can't." He told me to come back the next day. He was an extremely calm, very composed man who spoke very little. Above all, his aura emanated extraordinary love. He seemed to be giving all the time. I returned the next day, and they sat me in a room quite far from his room, and gave me instructions on how to meditate. Straight away, I was gone. I closed my eyes and something ran up my spine. I went into a trance, a state which was unknown to me. The more I came to the ashram, the more things happened to me. So much so that I thought, he must be a magician. He's playing tricks on me. I was very worried, sometimes even afraid. I felt I was no longer in complete possession of my body. I no longer controlled my body at all. It made movements I was unable to control. I saw many things I was unable to control. The awakening had begun. I spent almost 3 months with Guruji in Rishikesh, then I left him. Guruji sent me to Bandvad in the south of Gujarat, where his ashram was. Before I left, he asked me to be very careful not to go into a trance during the journey, to avoid being robbed. He was worried that I might fall into a trance on the way. Nothing happened, and I arrived in Bandvad a few days later.
Oh, Jai Gurudev, Jai Gurudev. अच्छे हाँ बहुत अच्छा
We had no idea what the stuff about the ashram and the guru represented, until the day he wrote, "I'm going into a retreat." I need silence. I need to turn a new leaf, so I won't be writing anymore.
Donc je n'écrirai plus. Ne vous inquiétez pas, tout ira
Don't worry
bien,
about me.
je suis-
I'll be taken care
je suis
of.
entourée,
Nothing can
je
happen
ne
to me,
risque rien,
but you won't be hearing from me
mais
again.
Vous n'aurez plus de mes nouvelles. Nous n'avions aucun moyen de communiquer.
We had no
directement avec
direct
lui,
means of
donc
communication
nous
with
étions
him.
obligés
We just had
de
to face
rendre à
facts
l'évidence
and
et
accept his decision.
d'accepter son choix.
Je lui reprochais un petit peu de
I did resent the fact that he didn't write to us or use any other means of contacting us.
contact avec nous. Je ne voulais pas
I couldn't believe that what he was doing over there
là-bas
was more
était
important
plus
than his
important que
parents.
ses parents.
Il nous avait bien sûr parlé du gourou.
He had talked
de
about his guru, his influence, his teachings,
son influence, de ses enseignements.
Et
Et
ça, j'avoue que ça m'agaçait quelque peu.
and that annoyed me a bit.
J'avais du mal à admettre
I couldn't accept this
ça
person into my mindset.
dans mon schéma mental. Il m'a fallu du temps.
It took me some time before I finally
Je finis
accepted.
par accepter. Je reprochais à ce
I felt that this guru that I didn't even know had, in a way, stolen my son,
volé mon fils, quoi, en quelque sorte. Et j'avais
and I wanted to back off, but at the same time, to go and find this chap and see what he had to say.
ce qu'il avait dans la tête.
Le lien filial.
The filial bond changes enormously whenever the son becomes an ascetic. The intense concentration means you don't deal with anything anymore. It's not just your relationship with your parents, but with everybody. You no longer have a relationship with anyone. The only relationship you do have is with your master. It's not a selfish attitude at all. It's the necessary attitude, otherwise you can't progress. It's just not possible.
Et j'estimais que de toute façon, à partir du moment...
In my view, as I was living with this master, who was guiding me in my asceticism, who accommodated me in his ashram, who fed me, my only relationship was with him. Everything else had completely vanished. Even the other disciples didn't interest me. I was totally absorbed in my asceticism.